Welcome to the stream, guys. So today I'm going to be going over a mobile game design that I've been coming up with called Doom Dial. Of course, that's a working title that may change. However, so this is for a mobile phone. The idea is that we're going to combine some of the things that I love to create a better game. Consider it kind of like a mashup in a way, yet it comes out to be a wholly unique experience. So for this game, this Doom Dial game, there's a board game called Castle Panic where you are at the center and you have your structures there, and bad guys will come in from the sides and destroy your structures, and you have a hand of cards that you use, and you use those to destroy guys in different zones. And then if you don't have the right cards to destroy the monsters, then the monsters hit your castle walls and they destroy your castle and you can lose the game. So I really like that mechanic, but I found that there was no creativity on your part. There's not much that you could do to decide how you're going to play the game well. There was strategy, but not quite enough for me. Then we look at a game like Transistor. Now, if you guys have played Transistor, Transistor is a beautiful game with an amazing battle mechanic or battle system. I'm not talking about pressing spacebar and pausing the match and then planning out your turn and stuff like that. I'm talking about their actual fighting, I guess their move system is what you would call it. So in their move system, you have things like 12 base moves, but then every move can be modified by up to 2 of the other base moves. And the modification will change how that ability functions, or maybe the statistics, or the strength of it, or the duration, or the fact that it might split into threes and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that kind of a mechanic. It seems incredibly fun to do because you get to brag about your build. You get more connected to the character. Instead of playing as the character, you are the character. So I was looking for something like that. So I started creating this game, Doom Dial. And then I was trying to think, how do I create that system where I can get that same effect but in a different way? Well, the different way was using another mechanic that I saw in Dawngate, Waystone's MOBA, was how to create a statistic page that you got, nobody else got. It was solely yours. So you play the same character as other people. However, your character had this extra bonus that you got to design, and I really like that. So I'm combining those 3 elements, those 3 mechanics, those 3 ideas or game theories into one mobile game. So this is essentially an RPG-style tower defense game, except you get to remain mobile. So it's a slight abstraction, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't be skinned to basically anything. So if we check this out here, this is going to be your base layout. Right now there are some blank pieces, and I'll go over those in a second. This is your board, so I'll just go over your board. In the center you have your health. That's the most important thing. As you take damage, and I'll explain how in a little bit, your health will diminish. And I'm just going to do some jump cuts here, but essentially your health would get smaller and smaller, and as it gets smaller and smaller, then maybe the screen starts flashing, or maybe this white zone starts to crackle or something like that, and it kind of starts showing you that, oh no, you could be in some serious trouble here. You're going to want to do something. You don't have much time left. So let's just keep it at full health for right now, and we'll go to the next ring. So this ring right here, this blue ring, this thing is going to... Oh, I should probably... 1 second here. I can fix that. This stuff should have been placed into this zone, or not. Okay, so let's cut and paste. There we go. And it's a little off. Let me fix that. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Sorry about that. So to start, you have this right here. The reason why it's called Doom Dial is because this dial here gets to rotate, and it's a little sloppy right now, but I'll explain why in a little bit. So so you're gonna have a few of your what I'm going to consider towers. Let's call them towers for now, but essentially they're going to evolve into something a little bit more than that as you start understanding how this game works. So you have these towers here, and you can activate them by pressing the appropriate one on the side. Now, to begin, to begin a game, you may start with a single tower that you can rotate around each of these 6 different pathways. So, you know, you can touch anywhere on the screen and just rotate anywhere on the screen, and it will rotate it, and when you let go, it'll snap to whatever the closest zone that this is in. So it'll be pretty easy to code in that regard. Then what you're going to have to do is tap one of these guys right here, and as you do, it will fire off a projectile. So the projectile will then kill the incoming bad guy, etc., etc. So that's essentially the core mechanic of the game. Now I'm going to start getting into some details. So this, you're going to start with 1, then you can evolve into having 2, and then 3, then 4, and then eventually you have this right here, and you have a bunch of different abilities. Now keep in mind the art in this right here is completely just developer art. This is bad art. This is not the color scheme nor the design that the game will actually be in for icons and whatnot. So as you can see, this one right here associates with this one here, this associates with this one, etc., etc., etc. So your phone, you're holding your phone horizontally in your hand, and you're tapping the sides to click on the 3 buttons, but you can also drag anywhere in the screen, and even if you click on a button and drag, it will rotate the circle here, the dial. So now, now that I have all that, I will show you the true rotation of it. So this is what happens. So it's not quite centered for some reason. Let's go ahead and center that, or not. It doesn't want to center it properly. Huh. How about if I hold shift? There we go. So that's pretty close to centered at least. So the idea is that if you want this guy to fire off here, you make sure he's here and then you hit that button. But then if you need him in a new place because his ability differs or fits a situation best, then you rotate it, and then once it locks into place, you click this button again. Now that would be all fine and dandy if there weren't something called cooldowns. So cooldowns are going to be like this right here. Let's say you activate this guy right here. He's going to go on the button, and the icon, the tower right here, is going to go dark. And that means that you cannot use that. You cannot activate that, that tower or that ability. Now, notice this one right here. This one is rising. So it's opening like a window. And as soon as it opens all the way, the timer countdown is done. Depending on the difficulty or the power level of each of these abilities, the cooldown might be longer or shorter. So you click it, and you really need that to work again, but unfortunately it just is on cooldown, so you're going to have to wait and use a different tower in the meantime. So once you have all of your towers, this is what it looks like. The next thing that you have to realize is that on top of the cooldowns and the abilities and stuff like that, why are you even doing this? Well, you're being invaded, and so each one of these pathways, as you can see, divided up into 6 zones. There's also an 8-zone version, but I'm not sure if I like that one. Maybe that'll be the advanced version. Who knows? But you can have 8 zones. You can have 6 zones. So what's going to happen is bad guys are going to start coming from a direction. As the bad guys are coming from a direction, you have to hit the zonal. The zone alarm will alert you. Sorry, the zone alarm will alert you to the presence or the incoming, the presence of incoming bad guys. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here. So if you have the zone alarm right here, so that notice that jumps on. What that means is that there's a bad guy coming from here. Now there are 2 indicators for how difficult the bad guys are or how fast they're going to move. So for example, if it's really dark red, if it's a really obvious dark color, it means that the bad guy is really beefy, he's really strong. He might hit hard or might have a lot of HP, he's a difficult enemy. And then the lighter it is, the less informed that you will be. So eventually, you know, like you can see a slight difference. That's probably the lightest that it'll get, something like that. And so that's going to tell you how strong the enemy is. Then on top of that, how fast this fades in and out. And it won't just turn on and off. It'll be a fade. It'll be like that kind of thing. And it'll alert you to the fact that there's a really fast bad guy coming, or there's a really slow bad guy coming. All right, and then this is going to be basically the opacity. It's like how you know, how bright is this is going to be how strong it is, and how fast it flickers is how quick the enemy is. So you might have to get a fast firing projectile ability to that spot. So let's go on to projectiles. There are different types of projectiles here. So you have really fast So the size of the bullet, first of all, is going to indicate the power of the bullet. Whereas, this one's small, this one's large. Now you're going to notice the distance between the bullets as well. So certain guns are going to have a very fast fire rate. Certain guns or abilities are going to have a very slow fire rate. And it's not necessarily directly correlating to the size or power of the bullet. So you could have very strong bullets firing very quickly, but they may not have any other stats attached to them, and I'll go over that in a little bit. You also have things that are going to be called traps. Traps are things that just appear at a set location when you press them. So this appears here, this one appears here. What that means is that at some point I have done this ability in this area over here, and then when I was done, I moved it over to here and I set it here. So you have the ability to use the guns in different pathways. Now, traps are going to be things like caltrips and poison gas and mines and slowing goo and maybe spikes, so when they walk over them it hurts them a lot, or caltrips, or it walks over them, it slows them down and hurts them a little bit. Poison gas, they can walk right through it, but they're going to take damage over time. So if you combine that with another tower shooting a slowing bullet at somebody or a knockback bullet into somebody, you can create a cloud of dust that lasts for X seconds, and then keep the enemy in that cloud of that poison cloud, not a cloud of dust, right? So there are a lot of combinations that you can do. Then we're going to go over here. This one right here, the shape of it obviously is going to start indicating something as well. I mean, this again, design or developer art. This is not designed art. This is just to get a point across. These triangles right here, these are going to indicate that they go through shields. They're shield penetrators, or maybe they can go through multiple units, something like that. So you'll have to get into the game more to understand what each icon shows, what each icon does, it associates with. Then over here you can see this. This is going to be like a very small projectile, but if it hits, it has a huge AoE damage radius, and the damage is oftentimes going to be less than the small. And then you notice that it's also spread, which is really cool. So there are different things that you can do. You can do, when it hits somebody, it does a cone of damage behind them, so it hits and explodes behind them. Or you can do AoE where you add an arc statistic or an arc ability to one of your towers here, and as it shoots up and it lands, it then does a circular 360-degree AoE damage. So this one has the split trigger, the arc trigger, and the AoE trigger. And as you can see, the damage is not very big, but there's a lot of AoE here, and it's going to be specifically ranged. It's not going to go for it's not going to fire right here. It's not going to fire right here. It will only fire at this range. So you have to time it at the right time. There's also range that things are going to go. Like, for example, these red bullets, they only travel out to here, but they shoot really quickly. These ones travel way out to here, but they shoot very slowly. And you can get ones that shoot out further. And so you're noticing that there's a gradient of design here, of color here, and I'll tell you what that is later. Okay, so the next thing that we want to go over is maybe you have an ability that lays down shields. So these guys are shields right here, the things that I just turned on, these little yellow circles, or partial circles. So when you put a shield down, you can then rotate to another area and the cooldown will go down. As soon as the cooldown comes back, you can activate the shield again and you can put it in a new spot. And so you can just let enemies run into it because you have two different types of shields. You have just normal damage absorption shields, and then you have spike shields which will actually deal damage back to them. So if you have just this shield right here, this guy's going to hit it and it's going to deal less damage to you, but he's still going to hit you. And then you can have a spiked shield which will deal damage back to him, meaning that it could kill him and then absorb a little bit of damage as well. But if it doesn't kill him, maybe you shoot him once a little bit, and the spike shield may not kill him all the way, but it might damage him pretty heavily. So if you shot them first, or maybe sent them through a poison gas cloud, and then as they hit the spiked shield here, it would deal the last little bit of damage to them, and your shield would absorb some of the damage that might happen to you. Some enemies might explode in AoE, so the shield could help you with that as well. So you can lay down shields, and there might be different types of shields, etc., etc., etc. There's so many things you can do in this game. Okay, then the next thing that you have is going to be bad guys. So bad guys, there are different types of bad guys. Obviously, the size of the bad guy is going to dictate how powerful that bad guy is, how much HP he has. So basically, this guy right here, he's got a lot of HP. Notice the green circle in the center of the character. This is just, again, design language, development language. This doesn't necessarily have to associate to the design language. Okay, so this guy, as he gets hit, his shield, or his health will start shrinking. When it reaches 0, it goes away. Now, he's about to run over this trap, but the interesting thing is he's got this shield. It's not a 360-degree shield, but it's going to rotate around him. It's going to spin around this little bad guy here. So this bad guy in particular, if you time it right, you can shoot him without hitting his shield. But if you time it wrong, you hit his shield and it reduces the amount of damage that gets dealt to him. I should probably make the shield yellow so that everything has a similar color language. But again, this is design art, not development art. Or this is development art, not designed art. I don't think I need to say it again. I think you guys get it. Plus, I keep confusing the two. Okay, and then this guy over here, these guys don't just move in a straight line. They come in like a snake. You know, they come in like a sine wave. And as they're coming in, your bullets may miss them. It may hit a guy behind them, but not the guy in the front. So these guys move very quickly, or these guys move really slowly. You know, it's completely up to how you design the bad guy. But the course of their movement is going to be what's important. So now, if this was a shorter trap, they might be able to just snake right around it and come in and hit you. But because the trap is just wide enough in this case, I put this trap on here specifically to deal with these guys, because I know it's going to be able to deal damage, just enough damage and survive for 10 seconds, and it'll kill an entire wave of those guys. Okay, so those are kind of the bad guys right here. And when they die, they explode in little boom, you know, not too distracting, but it's going to be fairly obvious. There's going to be a flash or some sort of little, you know, spark like that. You also are going to have access to, what was I going to say? Oh, no. No, I think that's it, really. Oh, yeah, okay, that's what I was going to say. You have access to altering these abilities. That's what I was kind of coming back to before, is that each one of these abilities, it's not just a, you know, you don't unlock this guy that just shoots these giant green circles really slowly and they go pretty far. It's not just that. Actually, you get to design every single one of these attacks using what the bad guys drop. The bad guys drop, like, kind of parts to upgrade your system. So, for example, if a heavy bad guy, like he's really heavy, right? But if you can deal enough damage to him and you can kill him in the outer zone, the rarity percentage of what he would drop is increased. So, for example, instead of dropping a really you know, basic piece, and you kill him way out here, he has a 50% chance of dropping a very rare piece. So there's rates of drop and rarity of drop. So those are all going to be decided upon by the zone that you kill them in. So now, if you kill a really fast guy at the last second, right before he hits you, then man, you just saved yourself. That's really awesome. Your rarity or your rate of drop increases for that guy. Now, if you kill the big bad guy, the really heavy guy, you know, in the mid zone or really close to you, then you're killing him where you would normally be able to kill him at a normal range. They expect, yeah, I would expect you to be able to kill him by the time he gets really close to you. But so you're not going to have as cool of drops or as strong of drops, or the rarity of the drops won't be as high. Maybe it might not even drop anything. So it's going to be rate of drop and rarity of drop are going to be very important. So what that does is, between levels, between waves of enemies, you get to open up your workshop, and your workshop is where you get to design these different abilities. And so if I do this is a really crude, super crude version, but in the beginning, you're not going to have the most focused of abilities. Your ability is going to have a little bit of damage, a little bit of life drain, maybe a tiny bit of knockback, or a tiny bit of slow. Maybe it's got a stun, maybe it's got a little bit of range on it, or a speed increase, or an arc to it, or something. You're just kind of trying to mash all of the pieces that you collect, these random pieces collect, you're trying to mash them together to create an ability. So for example, every single one of these pieces has a little bit of damage on them, but they also have a secondary ability. So for example, this is damage plus small heal. Well, we have over here high damage plus a little bit of self damage. Now that's a little scary, but it's got high damage, so maybe you're okay combining the small heal with the self damage. You also have a little bit more of a larger heal over here. So maybe these two are bouncing back and helping you here. Not to mention you have a bit of a damage plus a small shield. And then you have damage plus dodge, and you have damage plus speed increase, increase, and then you have stun plus damage, and damage plus penetration. So these are kind of just a sampling of the pieces that you could have in this game. Now, what I have here, if partially in the black line, this is the shape of your ability. Only use damage or effect, but not both. I would say probably only gives you damage, but it doesn't give you the cool effect of it, right? So if you can piece these Tetris-like pieces together perfectly, then you get the ability and the damage that comes with it, which would mean that you could really focus your pieces towards a very specific type of move. For example, I have a stun. Well, this stun right here is really large and cumbersome. It's an odd shape. So that means I need to find some pieces that will fit with it. Well, over time, as I collect more and more pieces, I might get a really good duration piece that fits perfectly in here. Like, it's a big chunk right here. And so now I've got, like, you know, this spot right here with this little nook here. So that whole spot is giving me an extra duration to whatever the ability does. Then over here I might do an AoE effect, so maybe it hits more than one enemy at a time. So that takes up a huge area over here, and then I have this little area over here, and maybe I put in a little bit, like a smaller stun piece, so it just increases the stun power just a little bit more, right? So, or maybe I add knockback, so I knock back and stun them, and so any forward momentum stops, they move backwards, and they get stunned for a little while and they can't do anything. So, with that being said, you know, you've now made a very concise ability, and it's exactly what you want it to be as the user. So you as far as these abilities go, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 across, so it's a 6x6. Maybe you can upgrade to 7x7. Maybe you can upgrade to 8x8. Maybe you can get this thing to a 10x10, and you can have the coolest, strongest abilities ever. However, because you're doing that, maybe because you're choosing to do that, all of a sudden the enemies are harder. Maybe they move faster, they have more HP, maybe they reflect a small amount of damage, etc., etc., etc. So you can do a lot with this system here. Let's see. Control tab. There we go. So, as I said, each one of these is going to be completely designed to be what you want it to be. Alright, so real quick, we're going to go over some of the ideas that I have in this game. So the board spins at the center, etc., etc., etc. Maybe there's a super meter that you can build up for destroying a certain number of people really, really well, really quickly. You also have skill blocks. More skill blocks are unlocked as the player progresses. Maybe there are some predefined skill blocks, or, you know, these things I'm calling skill blocks, or towers, or whatever you want to call them, guns, it doesn't really matter. Maybe these skill blocks are, you can unlock, by beating a boss, you can unlock one that has a base stun amount. And it comes with a piece already in it, but you can't move that piece around. You can't pick it up and rotate it and move it somewhere else. You're stuck with it. But it comes innately with the stun ability, and it's more powerful than a normal, you know, stun piece would be that you put into any other empty skill block. So now you have a stun piece, and you purposely put it here. And you're like, I want that stun piece. I'm going to build it out with a bunch of other things on it. So there's also options for predefined or semi-predefined or biased skill blocks. On top of that, I think that it would be really awesome that once you define what your ability is and you design how your ability works, you also get to choose the logo. So maybe you have a skull for a poison gas, and so that you are associating specifically poison gas with that skull. Maybe you have a spear icon for penetration, or maybe you have you know, a heart icon for healing. And so you're like, this ability mostly heals things. So then you make it, you know, so you look at these icons over here and you are purposely associating what you've designed with the icon that you've chosen. So that's another small thing that I think could really help to increase the user experience. Okay, so then we have, let's see, each area indicates center of dial, blah, blah, blah. Okay, oh, another thing that could potentially happen is that as you're leveling up your character and as you're defeating bosses and completing worlds and stuff like that, you can unlock modifiers or limiters. Limiters would do things like you can only have 3 of these, but you gain 20% extra rate drop. You know, you can only have 3 skill towers, but you get a 20% increase in rate drop. So if you can beat a level, you're going to drop a lot more things, but the rarity is going to be lowered, or something to that effect. Or maybe what you do is you increase the heavy heavy zone, the third zone out here, and you really decrease these because you're going for trying to kill the big guys in the outer zone. So you actually increase this zone and you crumple these zones a little bit. And what that'll do is, you know, that'll give you an increase of rarity drop, but not rate drop. But it's a rarity drop only for the big guys. So you can kind of install these extra. You can turn on or off these extra limiters or functions to increase the game difficulty or give you bonuses to fire rate or whatever it is that you want to do. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see. Yeah, you get to name your skill too. Either the name or the icons will show up in the version of the dial. Yep, you have 4 abilities active in a skill block unless you upgrade your skill blocks. Alright, that's not really a big deal. Let's see, every X levels you unlock the ability to use a new skill block. Every Y levels is a large skill block, just like that. What program do I use to write the code? I actually don't. I'm a game designer. I'm not doing much of the writing of the code. I develop the game, the mechanics, the system. I balance it, and then we get a prototyper, somebody to prototype the game out. So I'm not doing much of the code now. Sometimes I'll do like mini codes, you know, to kind of just show what it would look like. But I can also just show you in Photoshop how the game functions, and then the coder will go ahead and do that kind of thing. So I'm just one part of the team, essentially. Let's see, you can earn special skill blocks, yes. Let's see, when a skill block... Okay, so another option is that you can have when a skill block is damaged enough. So let's say it takes one hit from this pathway, and then you rotate it, and you're trying to shoot with guys over here, but you don't notice this guy coming in from behind, and he hits this same block while it's over here in this pathway. Now he's at 2 damage, and maybe they have a health of 2 to 5 health, and so when they take damage, they might shut down for an extended period of time. Or maybe when they take damage, it increases their cooldowns by 0.25 seconds for the remainder of the match. There are so many different things. You can even attribute those kind of things to the bad guys themselves. Maybe this type of bad guy increases cooldowns for your weapons. Maybe this type of bad guy can eventually, if he gets 3 hits on him, he kills that skill block until you start the match over again. Maybe another guy decreases the rate of fire for one of your whatever he hits. So you can have status effects based on the bad guys as well. Oh yeah, this is another really fun idea. Maybe as you level up, you can purchase links. Links will allow you to connect 2 adjacent skill blocks so that they fire at the same time, but they might get a 150% increase in their ability power and only a 50% increase in their cooldown rating. So as you click this one here, you know, this guy here, this guy will also fire, and it's much, much stronger, but now they both go on cooldown at the same time. So a third of your rotatable skill block is just decimated. You don't have the ability to, you know, if you want to rotate them over here and use them over here, all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I used those guys already, they're on cooldown. Oh shoot, I need to rotate back real quick and use it here. Oh no, guys are coming over here. And then so you rotate this way and shoot this way, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, my cooldowns are back. Sweet, I need to rotate over here and protect myself over here. So that's the idea of maybe linking 2 together, maybe even linking 3 together. That would be really interesting. Maybe you can get a total of 3 links on the field, so you can link 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. Now all 4 of these are linked together, and these fire separately. So you can fire all 4 of these at the same time, but you need to fire these guys separately. So then you know, you start getting link icons between these things. You can rearrange them so that they're close together, etc., etc. So that's just another idea, linking skills together. Let's see, linked skill blocks fire at the same time, stronger with higher cooldowns. That's fine. Let's see. Okay, so skill pieces. They're dropped. So each piece has at least 1 stat on it. I don't think I'm going to go to 2 stats. Maybe those are the super, super rare ones. They're dropped by defeating bad guys. Rarity depends on where along the path you defeat the bad guy based on the type of bad guy. You can combine different skill pieces for interesting effects. You can discard them, or you can trade them in for and turn them into currency to purchase other ones. Maybe you trade in, you know, 3 tier D ones for a tier C one, and then 3 tier C ones for a tier B one, etc. And so you can upgrade your skill pieces without even having to go fight more guys. You can just collect. You can grind if you want to, or you can turn on the limiters, and you can make the game harder for yourself to increase the rate of drop. Let's see. Then you have upgrading. You could potentially upgrade skill pieces as well, not just turning one into other ones, but maybe you can you can spend your currency to upgrade the power of one. Maybe one has the ability. It starts out at 0.5 damage. And it can go up to 4 damage. And so you could pump currency into this to just increase your skill block's power, but it goes up to a threshold. Once it reaches that threshold, maybe you have the chance to then do one big final upgrade, and you can turn it into the next level because you've upgraded your tiny little skill blocks. So that's an option as well. Skill piece attributes. So you have damage, you have stun, percent chance, you have speed of projectiles, range, you have splash damage, and splash damage can mix with other pieces to make it larger. So maybe intensity, or maybe effectiveness is a stat you can have as well. Cooldown. So you can have cooldown reduction or cooldown increase to gain power. You have arcs. So like I was saying before, if you have an AoE like this, if you have a normal AoE right here and you would deal damage to somebody and hit somebody, it could explode in a triangle behind them, hitting multiple units behind them and further back behind them. However, if you combine the AoE with an arc, then it shoots only up to here. It doesn't actually travel along the path. It arcs, it misses everybody, and then it just lands right here. And when it lands, though, now it has a 360-degree AoE. So you can combine different things. Maybe more range or less range. You can get it to the sweet spot by tweaking your values. Then you have penetration or pass-through, or ignore armor so much that it gets to pass right through. You have knockbacks, you have short-range knockbacks, you have large-range knockbacks. If you have AoE, it knocks back based on the AoE distance, etc. You have life drain, you have size of projectile, usually will indicate strength of projectile. You have spread, so whether or not it spreads out. So when it shoots, does it shoot one here, or does it shoot randomly in a cone of 30 degrees, stuff like that. You have traps and bombs. You might have like a gravity bomb where you put a gravity bomb right here, and if an enemy hits it, it pulls any enemies that are adjacent to it to the same spot, and it allows you to kind of consolidate your enemies. Or maybe you have a special, one of your special abilities to drop a gravity bomb, and it pulls everybody on the entire board over to this one spot, and then you switch over to your strongest AoE damage stun weapon, and you hit them, and they all explode, and you're able to pass the level. You also have things like defense shredding, or bleeding, or poison, or elemental damage potentially. Elemental damage could be introduced to it. And then you have different types of bosses. So bosses will do things like hover around the outside of the edge, creating an issue for you. Like they might just keep loading you up with this one right here, so you have to constantly rotate your dial because your guys are all on cooldown. Maybe he then teleports to a new spot and drops 5 enemies, teleports to a new spot directly behind him, drops 5 more enemies, and so he's teleporting around the board and messing with you really heavily. He might even come in and attack. He might shoot projectiles of his own that you have to have shields for to defend against. Or maybe you can pull guys over, bad guys from one zone into another zone and block his projectiles. There's so much you can do with bad guys. Maybe he can create fields of darkness obscuring small portions of the board so you don't know how close the bad guys are. Maybe he duplicates bad guys randomly, so and you have to hit them directly, but they're going to be teleporting to different locations as well. Different types of bad guys. There are a lot of things that you can do with bad guys. Bad guys can have HP, they can damage, they can be ranged or melee, so they can actually shoot their own things. They might just appear in a location and not actually traverse closer to you. They might just shoot you. And so you have to shoot them really quickly. You have to get rid of them. They might have a shield. They might have a shield that rotates around them, so there's part shield, part not shield. They might explode when you kill them, and so if they're close to you when you kill them, they still deal damage to you. If they're close to their enemy, or if they're close to their friendlies, other enemies, then when you kill them, they might explode and help you do some AoE damage. They can move down in pairs, gradually getting closer and closer together. So if you're moving down the triangle, one's out here, and as they move closer, so you might not be able to shoot them until they get really close, unless you have a spread ability like this, which allows you to shoot guys who are coming down in pairs from far away. So it's a very, very massive amount of customization that you can do in this kind of a system. Some bad guys might swap zones when they hit. You hit them and they teleport to a new zone. All of a sudden you have to rotate and deal with them there. Bad guys might phase in and out, so as they're coming at you, you know, they might be unable to be hit. You know, intangible, tangible, intangible, tangible as they travel. Some bad guys might leave exploding things in the zone that will help or inhibit the next bad guy that walks over it. Maybe they leave, maybe every time you hit them, they leave a health pack behind them. So the bad guy behind them, if they walk over that health pack before you can destroy it, it heals them. Or gives them a shield or something like that. Some of them might move side to side as they come down. Some of them might move in a spiral throughout the whole section. Some might have an aura that helps other bad guys. Some might destroy your shields immediately or make your shields explode and they deal damage to you. Some might leech your shield so your shield gets smaller and smaller and smaller and their shield gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So you can have shield leechers, which I don't think I have in here. Let's do shield leeching. There we go. And I believe that's 2 E's. There we go. You can invert the direction, so if they hit you, all of a sudden now when you spin to the right, it spins to the left, stuff like that. It might only allow you to lock down your dial so that you can spin once before shooting, so you can only spin one spot at a time. And there's a lot of things you can do with that. You have level ideas or level modifier ideas, so you can potentially turn down by the player to increase the rate of drop or rarity of drop, or difficulty, or maybe it increases your health, but it makes the level harder. Bad guy kill zones change somehow, wider or skinnier, or non-existent at all. Spinning the dial spins the board in the opposite direction instead of the actual dial, so you're spinning the outside of it instead of the dial. The dial stays put. You have to think a lot differently. So that's like an inverse, where instead of spinning the dial, you're spinning the board. Let's see, you may only rotate 2 to 3 spots before having to use an ability, or maybe you have to fire, you have to have like the majority of your abilities on cooldown before you can rotate it. Or if you have 3 things on cooldown, you can't rotate your board. Maybe no warnings or no color indicator that the enemies are coming in with this kind of zone alarm. Or maybe there's no speed indicator, it just kind of is on and it lets you know somebody's coming, but you don't know how fast they're coming. So you can turn all these things on, and as you're turning all these things on, you can really create an incredibly diverse set of levels. And bad guys. Half of these attributes can be attributed to bad guys. Half of these attributes can be attributed to both the bad guys and your weapons or the zones specifically. Maybe you have ice zones. You're in an ice and fire level where you have ice here and fire here. If you shoot something on a fire zone, your cooldown is reduced. But if you shoot it on an ice zone, your cooldown is increased. So you can just do so many different things that are visually explained by colors and by shape and by art that you don't really need to do too much to it. Now that's all the advanced version. That's once you get really far along in the game. You've unlocked all of these skill towers. You've unlocked a bunch of pieces and you've upgraded them to your full effect, and they're the exact ability that you want. Maybe your health pool is increased. Maybe you reduce your health pool, but you gain a small shield everywhere as a passive. So you can install passives that you unlock by defeating worlds or defeating levels. Yeah, there's a bunch of things that you can do in this game, and it all starts from one single skill block with a few skill pieces that you insert into that skill block and design your own ability. As you kill guys, it's like one guy every 5 seconds. It's real easy. Then eventually you start getting swarmed and you're pressing a bunch of these at the same time, and then you're maxing out your super meter, and once your super meter gets maxed out, you hit it and it does things like instant cooldown reduction for everybody, or no cooldown for 5 seconds. You can just spam all of your abilities as many times as you want, as quickly as you want. Or maybe it knocks all the bad guys back in one big explosion. It puts them all into the outer ring, and so you have time for your cooldowns to come back. Or maybe you can get an overshield where this entire blue becomes your green health bar, or maybe it becomes a shield bar, or maybe it creates a 360-degree shield, or maybe your specials are just way bonkers, right? But you can. The thing is, there's so many micro rewards and micro goals in this game that you can implement, that this game is absolutely bound to be massive replayability and lots of upgradability, which leads to a ton of addictive style playing. So it's my take on what a tower defense could or should be if you combined it with an RPG-like system where you get to upgrade. Well, that's it for me. That was a 40-minute explanation of this game. I apologize that it took so long, but there's a lot to consider. This game is quite capable of being many, many things. So that's it, Doom Dial. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and put this up on YouTube for everybody to take a look at. Thanks for hanging out and checking out the program.